Hello, and welcome to Huge Fans. This is Catherine.
And I'm Ed.
Hi, it's Liz.
And John.
Okay, so on the docket, Taika Waititi.
We're huge fans of him, I think.
Yeah, I mean, here's, I want to first get into, this is a ridiculous thing, but like, how did you become aware of him? Because here's what happened to me, which is kind of silly, but I don't think I realized who he was or what he was doing or his presence in the world until Thor Ragnarok. And not even the movie. He was doing press for it, and he did a ridiculously funny interview with Chris Hemsworth, which I now can't find. But the two of them, were doing this interview together, and they were so funny. I think it was on the radio. I want to say it was like NPR. I looked up that maybe it was with Terry Gross, and that was not it, so I couldn't figure out where I heard it. But they were so funny together. I was like, who is this guy? They are like practically best friends. So many jokes about what they were doing in the movie and him directing the movie and putting himself in the movie and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, he's amazing. I come home and I tell my daughter, I'm like, oh my God, the director have this amazing piece of information. Ridiculous. I tell my daughter, the director of Thor Ragnarok, this guy, Taika Waititi, he's amazing. And she's like, oh yeah, have you ever seen or heard of What We Do in the Shadows? And I was like, no, what is that? Yeah. So this was the movie, and I don't know if it was available on demand or whatever, but we immediately watched it, and I was like, I am now a huge fan just based on that forever, and it doesn't even matter what else he'd done.
Well, let's give, in case you don't know who he is, right? So he was born in August 1975 on the 16th of the month. Actually, his real birth given name was Taika David Cohen.
Yeah, his mother, I believe, is Jewish, and I'm guessing that's where maybe the Cohen comes from, because his dad, I think, is Maori, right? He's from New Zealand. Sorry if we didn't say that. New Zealand.
Yeah, so the Taika Waititi, and I guess he had used two different names because he is a triple threat in this industry.
Oh my God, yeah.
Writing, quadruple. Writing, producing, acting, directing. I mean, there's probably something else that he does in the industry that we're not aware of. But so that gives you a little bit of background. And he is very well known now as a director for the Thor series in Marvel. And yes, that's where I think almost a very similar path where I either saw him do a press junket or an interview. Also, his name is so unique. The first time you hear it,
you're like, what?
You're like, wait, what? Taika Waititi? Okay. So then that in itself kind of grabs your attention. And then I will say Thor Ragnarok had a different tone to it.
Oh yeah, such a comedic element that had not been present in that way before.
So that made you go, something's a little bit different about this. They've always had a bit of humor. Obviously, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, has a way with his character in the Marvel series that leans toward that.
Yeah.
But this Thor, it was so surprising because he had not necessarily had a sense of humor before.
He'd been more like stoic. Yes, fish out of water comedy, but his character was kind of more serious.
Right.
And this was just full-blown making fun of himself.
Well, just the trailer, and I think it was that the trailer where he sees Hulk and he's like, that's my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, that's my friend.
It's my friend from work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just that alone made you go, wait, what's the tone of this? So, yeah, so I think here, all of us in the States had not had as much awareness to him until he came out from the shadows, from behind the scenes.
And for sure, it's like, it's not that he was in the shadows as a director. It's just that for some reason, if you don't put that person on camera, somehow it's a lot harder to penetrate the society and all the other stars that are in your projects. He's been doing stuff that I've been watching for 10 years before that trailer came out.
Your awareness,
Ragnarok. I was a fan of all the stuff that he was doing. I just wasn't paying attention to the director or the writer.
Right.
My bad.
Well, so the main movie that sort of launched him, well, first he did a short. I watched his 2010 TED Talk, which is very fun and ridiculous. He goes off on all these funny little tangents. Apparently he was an artist, was really his main thing. And then he was trying his hand as an actor. And there's this funny picture. I mean,
headshot type of vibe?
No.
No.
Well, there's a group shot and he's shirtless in the background. And he was like, I was on this movie and I was playing a stripper and I was in my trailer thinking, what am I doing with my life in my G-string? And
this is apparently a New Zealand TV show that we need to see called The Strip.
The Strip. Okay.
Oh.
There you go. John has the facts. Okay. So he's on this TV show as an actor and basically has not a crisis, but is like, what am I doing with my life? I don't think I want to be doing this. And I want to have a little more control. So he kind of jokingly says, and so I started writing that day in my G-string and and basically wrote a short film and then shot it and then got an Oscar nomination for it.
Whoa.
Which, I mean,
First out of the gate?
that is how he tells it.
Because he does have another short before that. I haven't seen that one. I have seen the one we're talking about, though.
What is the one we're talking about?
This is Two Cars, One Night, correct?
2 Cars, One Night, which is really quite spectacular. You can watch it right now on YouTube. It's like under 15 minutes. It's like a shorty short. And it focuses on 2 boys who are siblings in a car, literally waiting outside a bar, and you're under the impression that like, oh, their, parent or guardian or whoever is inside this bar. And they're just kind of like fooling around there. And then there's another character, another young kid in a car next to them. And then at the end, the people are coming out from the bar, the adults, and it's over. But the whole thing is so amazing and like perfect, and the kids are so good, and just he's very
It's shot
fun.
black and white too.
Shot black and white.
2 Cars, One Night.
Fantastic. So I like when he talks about it that he's very tongue-in-cheek about it. He's like, so then I just made this short and I get nominated for an Oscar. I mean, I didn't win, but still, I mean, I guess I'm pretty good at this. But then I didn't know if I wanted to do more, but people were like, you should do more because you got nominated for an Oscar. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I continued to make films. So it's funny to hear him talk about how he considers himself more of like an artist and a creator. And at least this was in 2010. He's like, I could be doing this for a while or maybe not. I could go back and do other things. I'm not locked into this movie making thing. I didn't study it. I don't, I'm just going to wing it kind of.
Wait, this is 2010 this was in?
2010. It was after he made Boy, which was hugely successful in New Zealand.
That was that year.
Yeah. So he was doing, not press, but like invited to do this TED Talk because of Boy and its success. Well, first of all, okay, so the movie Boy, he wrote and directed and then starred in as like a goofy dad character.
Well, I mean, he's it's like a co-star, right? He's not exactly the lead.
Yeah, the boy is the lead. The boy is stunning and amazing. I've heard Taika talk about working with children, and his philosophy is don't find a child who is trying to act. Just find a kid who is intellectually capable and has the emotional range to do this and is the right person for it, and then just let them be themselves. Don't try and like manipulate their performance or just get the right. So casting is his big thing.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he's so fantastic with kids. I mean, between that first short, this movie, eventually Jojo Rabbit.
Rabbit. Oh,
yeah.
the kids in that were fantastic.
Yeah. So Boy was 2010. But before that, I mean, we just skipped to Boy because it was a kid. But that takes us, we're skipping over. He did a couple other shorts, but then...
Including, I still haven't seen that What We Do in the Shadows short. Have you seen that?
No. Is it available somewhere? I'm wondering. I don't
think
know.
It wasn't when I looked.
Got it. Yeah. So he does a couple of shorts.
So not available in the shadows.
Still hidden in the shadows, the short. Okay, so he does a couple of shorts, and then he writes and directs Eagle versus Shark, which he does with Jermaine Clement, which is one of his best friends, collaborators on a bunch of stuff. He'll come up many times later in this.
Yeah, so this is 2007. It's also, that is the year their other collaboration, he... not as one of the leads, but Flight of the Conchords, directed 4 of those episodes. And as always, there's always a small acting part in there somewhere.
I wonder what part he played, because I watched that series and loved it, but I don't even remember him being in it.
Gypsy King's fan.
Yeah,
So-
I don't recall it at all.
I mean, give me because that was one of those TV shows, the tone of it, the sense of humor.
Very quirky and odd.
I was not attributing it to him, and also just all the actors, Brett McKinsey and then Kristen Shaw. Oh my God, I'm such a super fan of your guys. You're my favorite. And her husband, oh gosh. And Murray, their manager. So that is one of those shows I think you can still find on HBO Max.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I didn't attribute it to him yet. I didn't know his association. But it is one of those shows that if I'm flipping channels and for some reason an episode's airing, I will stop to watch it just to because it's the absurdity of it, the humor is so funny.
The songwriting.
Yeah.
Oh, all the songs.
Yeah, apparently that foursome of, Britt, Jermaine, Taika, and Reese, that is
strong.
And I mean, they've come back around so many times in slightly different ways. It's rather incredible.
Yeah, I was going to say Kristen Shaw, she also pops back up too. So, it's...
Yep.
She was really in Flight of the Conchords. I think that might have been the first time I really saw her and was like, what is going on here? But her complete commitment to being an obsessed fan of the only fan of the Flight of the Conchords.
Not even the Flight of the Conchords. It's mostly just Brett.
Yeah.
I mean, I think...
just was so brilliant, and just her conviction, and you're like, yeah, I believe her to be totally authentic and real in this role.
Yeah, so on that, Taika directed 4 episodes and then he wrote 2 episodes. So he was involved, not one of the core people, but he definitely has had a long-standing relationship with Jermaine Clement. So
yeah, apparently I've done this research multiple times and I always forget. Flight of the Conchords is those 2 guys. However, he did perform with them as part of a group of 5 earlier than that.
What?
Yeah, so it's
like a comedy troupe?
Yeah, so that's part of how they became associated, I think.
That they all know each other from that.
And it's that sense of humor that you're starting to see the through line, which will take you all the way up to the current Thor movie, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next thing that I was aware of, and again, this was sort of after the fact. So I watched Boy and loved it. And I had been aware of Hunt for the Wilder People, mostly because Sam Neill was in it.
Right.
And he's a big actor. So I was like, oh, what's this movie with Sam Neill? Never watched it at the time. Watched it semi-recently, like within the last couple of years. Loved it and realized like, oh, yeah, even though I was already a huge fan of Taika Waititi, mostly just because of the movie What We Do in the Shadows, I need to expand and like see what else he's been doing because apparently I really dig his vibe.
He's got
another
a great vibe.
Yeah, and another child actor he discovered in that's awesome is the Julian Dennison, a New Zealander. He's been in Deadpool. So he was sort of the kid in Deadpool that has an interesting arc.
Fire Fist, Deadpool 2.
Yeah, exactly. So Julian was pretty awesome, and that might have been one of his earlier, films, much less opposite Sam Neill, which is incredible. So, and Rhys Darby is in it as well. Using those same actors.
I mean, it's hard to... we're skipping around a little bit. Even having just watched Our Flag Means Death, it's hard not to think of Rhys Darby as the tour guide from Jumanji. That is, I go back to that so frequently.
He's always going to be a person in the office for the Board of Tourism for New Zealand or whatever.
Oh, from Flight of the Conchords?
Yeah, from Flight of the Conchords. He's just spent so much time as their agent / also at work trying to get people interested in the cows of New Zealand.
And now Sam Neill actually lives in New Zealand. Born in Northern Ireland, moved to Christchurch, New Zealand. So, man, we just need to go to New Zealand, people. Obviously, the New Zealand crossover.
The New Zealand crossover.
So, boy, yeah, that is, we're seeing the casting and him working with children. All that is in the DNA.
And also for him to have such a big performance in it, and he was amazing, because he obviously was in What We Do in the Shadows, but that was only the short at that point. So him performing in Boy was a big, meaty, and really incredible performance. I did hear him in an interview talk about that he's not good at making just dramas, and he really makes kind of a hybrid of a drama and a comedy, something with heart and something that is also funny. I was like, oh yeah, that's absolutely what you do. And I really love it. Yeah, so Boy, I just watched again recently, and it was amazing. There were elements of it that felt like Coen Brothers and a little bit of, I don't know. There was just vibes all over it that I really liked.
That's an interesting point because in this series, this podcast series, huge fans, we've covered another director who is like just all style to the end of the earth, Mr. Wes Anderson.
Sure. There was some Wes Anderson in there too, yeah.
And it's interesting because as we're talking about Taika, we're really saying his vibe is a whole sense that you get from his films. There's a comedy sense. It's not explicitly this style that's wrapped into these stories and the visual element. There's lots of visual elements, but the stories that he's directing have this human element that you can buy into. And it's like a genuine or a nice or a funny person, even if it's a Nazi.
He did say in an interview he likes the point of view of, I think he said, the naive. So whether it's a kid or an adult who is having sort of a naive, like looking through a kid's eye vibe, and boy, did that hit. Like I really then could see across a lot of his work. I'm like, oh yeah, you are doing that. You have this point of view of like, keep it light and keep it, maybe if it's an adult who's a little bit dim, or a little bit skewed in the way that they're seeing the world, or like a little bit, not seriously paying attention to what's happening. I thought that was an interesting way of him talking about his perspective.
Well, her style too.
Yeah, and what the stories that he likes to tell. Yeah. So let's go from Boy, and then I'm going to say, can we jump to What We Do in the Shadows?
We're going to skip Green Lantern.
I was going to say Green Lantern. Yeah, is that his first dip into the superhero world?
Yes, even though Ryan Reynolds has basically disavowed Green Lantern.
Aww.
Yes,
I mean, less so than his original Deadpool cameo, but they still don't like it.
But what was Taika's association with Green Lantern?
He was the friend. He was really helping out Ryan.
I don't remember that at all.
He drove a Jeep. How do you not remember these things?
He was an actor in it.
I mean, there's definitely times where he is just an actor, in which he brings a whole awesome quality to that. So I don't need him to always do everything. No, just you can have him as an actor. Oh, God. I mean, really.
I'll take voice acting, too.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, this is really skipping ahead, but the very recent performance in Freeman.
Oh, fabulous.
Like, yeah, just put him in.
That's one of the other things. I think there's a different circumstance, but like when I think of him to a degree, I think of all his entrances are so great. And then like, oh, wait, I got this problem. I got to think about it. I'm going to sit down in the middle of the hallway and think about it. And you're like, what are
his
you doing?
physical choices are very interesting.
Well, I think he actually is a lot like that in real life. When you see him do interviews, his energy is very strange and fun, and he's keeping it real light, and he's not taking himself or it too seriously. That's what he ended up saying in this one interview about directing. He's like, people are so serious. I don't want to be serious. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to be like driving in my car to work. I'm going to have fun, and we get a lot of material, and then hopefully we can put it together in a way that makes sense to make a movie.
I mean, catchphrase is pretty good, though.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, just acting-wise, right above Green Lantern is Coffee Town, which I don't remember him from Coffee Town, but I did see that. He's uncredited, John, but it does say...
Wow. Wait, are we talking about one of the infamous incidents?
Yes. We watched Coffee Town with Eric, and it's a movie, and for some reason he thought it was a TV show, and he couldn't figure out why it was like not ending. He's like, how long is this TV show?
Yeah, we're like an hour and 10 or an hour 20 in. He's like, how long? And we're like, dude, it's a movie.
He was like, oh, well, all right. Okay, so after Coffee Town, then we get What We Do in the Shadows. And I mean, I will say for me, particularly because I went right from being vaguely aware of him as a person and director and having a fun relationship with Chris Hemsworth to then seeing him play this vampire, my mind was blown. And then realizing that he like wrote it and directed it, and it's so crazy, brilliant, ridiculous. It's still on my DVR. It's like 5 years old. It's sitting there.
There's new episodes airing right now.
Well, so that the original movie is the one that he was in.
Right.
And then obviously FX picked it up as a TV show years later. He was not going to be, one of the main characters. So I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this. Well, guess what? I love it. So, yes, I think it's on season 5, which is fantastic.
It is funny because you guys, the movie, so you had said earlier, Sarah was telling you about it after Ragnarok. Now, we are talking about just 2014 to 2017. So it's not the longest period of time. But Sarah, I guess, was already kind of a secret fan. But then between the two of you became like the super fan of it.
Yeah.
And then I've heard about it 1,000 times since then. But it was like, well, me and Sarah knew about it before. So but only for 3 years it went under your radar.
Yeah, but it felt like forever. Like I should have known about it.
It's true, but now it is your radar. So.
Oh God, I love it so much. I could watch it right now.
And there was some cast members that were in the movie that translated to the series.
Yeah, but the 3 main vampires, because it was him and Jermaine Clement and another actor that I had no awareness of, Johnny Braw, I want to say. Yeah, I was skeptical that the TV show would work without the 3 of them. Geez. And then, of course, they really just nailed it. So, and the idea that they were going to be in America, I was like, what? No, you have to be in New Zealand. Come on.
This is a classic. This happens to me all the time where you hear what the description is and you're like, no, I already thought I knew what I wanted. That's not what I want. Turns out it's fine.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It's fine or great even. Yeah.
Now, Matt Berry, who plays one of the Laszlo in the TV series, is listed in the film, but I don't remember. He might have been a very small character.
I don't remember what I played in that film.
Yeah, that was a pretty good Laszlo.
That was a pretty good Laszlo.
Yeah,
I'm opening my nightclub, my vampire nightclub.
That's a pretty good Nadia.
Yeah, so Matt Berry, he was on the vampire radar in the movie, and that's how he ended up in the series, which is incredible.
The whole cast is fantastic in this TV show. I'm very excited that they're continuing on, and we mentioned in another podcast that they got nominations this year, Emmy nominations, which is like, what? That's so great. Are you kidding me?
Because the writing and the performances are incredible. They really, the sense of humor, that it's sort of a reality show of, mockumentary of a vampire's world is done. It's very much in the vein, hey, pun intended, but chew. John, that was a complete accurate pun. He's like,
I refuse to ask what you mean.
Vampire's vein. Oh my gosh, you have to explain a pun. It's not worth it. Anyways, that is almost in the same, I'm going to go back to it, vein as The Office, where there is a crew following them, but even though they direct camera quite often, you don't understand why it's there, if it's ever going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
That is the genius. That setup of being able to do direct to camera and then also like fly on the wall, but also the off-kilterness of having someone follow you, but married to both, I guess, first the ridiculous setting of vampires versus an American Office where it's like, well, that could make sense. Wait, you're going to do a normal documentary about vampires? That seems challenging. But then lastly, just Taika's sense of humor. All of their sense of humor. That really just sends it so far over the top.
Yeah.
And once again, almost using like a repertory type of, you have this group of actors you keep going to, because Kristen Schaal, she's in this season and she might have been the previous 2. Yeah.
She's hysterical on the Vampire Council or whatever she's
very
doing.
serious. It's the Vampirial Council. Yes.
Ridiculous and great. And then Taika did show up a couple times as a vampire on the council. So that was fun. You're like, oh yeah, get in there. Love it.
And that's airing now on FX, right?
FX and Hulu. So it's like, one of their crossover things where you can watch it.
It might be on FXX or FX on Hulu too. I think
How many X's?
Yeah, there's various things happening.
Oh, yeah. So that is one of the current projects that is fantastic. Also, Our Flag Means Death, which is fantastic, which he is acting in and is just... He doesn't come in the first 2 episodes, I believe. And then when he shows up, then you've really got it.
I have to reserve judgment now because the way that first season ended... now everything is put back into question. So we got to see how it goes in season 2.
And that's on HBO Max. And it's only been 1 season so far?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you jumped way ahead because that's actually like a current project.
Just because we were talking about how What We Do in the Shadows is currently in its 5th season and who's on it and how great it was and that he acted in it. And then I segued mentally to him acting.
And Rhys Darby's in it again. And I actually love that actor that plays Frenchie, who's Joel Fry. He's very unique, but he's really cool.
Joel Fry.
One
One of Catherine's favorites.
Yep. So good.
Yep. So that is currently something you can watch on HBO Max. It's sort of like, is it a pirate spoof, sort of? It's set in the world of pirates?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't even know if it's a spoof. It's just a pirate comedy, which, then all of a sudden makes it, ridiculous.
I think you're both wrong. I think it's a pirate love story.
Oh, well, it is a pirate love story.
Yes, it is. It is considered a rom-com, which is like...
Yeah.
Okay.
So back on track. So let's go back to What We Do in the Shadows. This is 2014. That's the movie. Then followed up by Hunt for the Wilder People, which is 2016, which was amazing. Then he does the Team Thor, the little video shorts of
Everyday Life. One of them is where Thor
has a roommate,
a very regular guy, and Thor's just trying to have a regular life. You can see those on Disney Plus.
Love it.
They're great. I just watched a bunch of them because I knew we were going to be doing this podcast, and also they're just so fun to watch when you discover them, with my son Ethan, 14. They're just so perfect.
Yeah, the leaving the hammer in the middle of the room, which no one can pick up the hammer and move it because it weighs 1,000 pounds and only Thor can move the hammer. It's like, what? Oh, God. And again, very much that mockumentary style of talking to the camera like The Office, and Thor being sort of obtuse about what an annoying roommate he is. So great. And
this is where we age the meat.
I don't know where in the scheme of things, because he'd obviously already met with the Marvel team, and he said in an interview, well, this is how you get to direct the Thor movie. You meet with the Marvel team, they love you, I love them, then I direct the Thor movie. You're like, what? That is too easy and simple, but very funny. So I assume that he met with the Marvel people, then directed these shorts as part of you're going to direct this Thor movie.
Yeah, I think it's more because, he also did a Doctor Strange mid-credit scene. So I think part of their philosophy is, okay, some people are in certain lanes. So Taika's in the Thor lane. And all right, we're going to put a mid-credit scene in a movie that comes out before the Thor movie comes out as part of the prep. And then I think it also is just kind of the PR strategy. And they've also changed strategy multiple times. But with this Thor, they're like, what if we do a bunch of shorts? It's like, okay, sure.
And they were genius. So good idea.
We'll get this awesome shorts director and do a bunch of shorts. I would like to direct a feature. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think they were already on board for letting him direct the feature, which I guess Chris Hemsworth and him couldn't decide if they should divulge that they knew each other. So,
oh, really?
Taika was meeting with the Marvel people, and I guess this is a little story that he told in an interview with Chris for some press or something. And he said, I was in Hawaii and I got this call to come in and meet with the Marvel people. So I send my family back to New Zealand with half of my luggage because I don't want to take all this stuff. Unfortunately, I put my passport in there. So now, being a New Zealander, he can't really just travel around the United States without a passport. And he's like, and this is what the New Zealand driver's license look like. It's ridiculous. It looks like a joke. So now I have to go to the airport without a passport.
It may as well have said McLovin on it.
Yeah. So he's basically going to the airport with no passport, and this is the universe telling me I'm not going to get to go to this meeting and not direct this movie. It's fine. Whatever. It's fine. Whatever. And his agent's like, no, go to the airport and just see if you can get here. So he goes to the airport, he pulls out his driver's license, and they're like, what is that? That is ridiculous looking. Do you have any other form of ID?
Oh, boy.
So he's like, well, I do have this contract that said that basically I wrote the first version of Moana. So it's got my name and
the animated Disney.
Yes. And he shows that to the TSA or whoever, and they're like, what? you were involved in Moana? Like, they were very excited. And then they were
He was in Hawaii while
he was in Hawaii.
Wow, that's a little on point.
Little
Okay.
kismet
Yeah, okay.
going on there.
Why do you have that and not his passport? That's hilarious.
Don't know. Well, I mean,
He brought some stuff to work with him.
Okay.
On his vacation. He brought some work with him on his vacation.
Yeah, he probably had his work bag or whatever, and it's in there. So he
Shows the contract.
He shows the contract to these very impressed security people, and he does this funny little like look around, like, uh-oh, okay, should we let him go? And then they're like, get on that plane, and they just sent him to like get on the plane, which is amazing that happened. So, but I guess he and Chris had met each other years before when he directed Boy, and it was such a big hit in New Zealand. Chris was aware of him and wanted to meet him, and they said it was very awkward, like a first date, and we're both at this cafe and it's so weird and we don't know what to talk about, and then we became best friends. So anyway, they basically were like, should we tell Marvel that we know each other? And I guess they didn't. They kind of kept it. Yeah, I think that's very funny that they were like, maybe we'll just let it play out. And then obviously they later divulged, oh no, we super duper know each other and we love each other and think each other are great. That is the beginning of that. So I do love that he almost didn't get to that meeting and was like, maybe the universe is telling me you're not going to direct Thor.
But did they hold hands over a lava pool and make a Thor baby?
Hey, spoiler, don't talk about what we now understand to be the backstory of Korg.
Korg.
Yeah, which very funny when you hear him doing press and he does not want to divulge that is
his voice.
No. He's fully fine with saying that he's both the voice and does the motion capture, I guess. He like walks around as Korg, and so he's doing all of the
apparently
acting.
He did the king for this one as well, and then he had done that like sort of apocalyptical creature that happens at the end of Ragnarok as well. So he's helping himself out. But yeah, go
I love that.
Going.
I mean, that is actually that first interview that I heard. That was what was so funny. He was like, I'm directing. I'm just going to put myself in here a whole bunch. We need more Taika Waititi. More me. Chris was like
this rock character. That was a cool addition. Okay, well, I'm going to do a rewrite now. And now he's got a lot of lines. And then they read it and they're like, Korg is in this a lot more now.
I mean, that was basically the vibe of the interview, and Chris was just cracking up. That's what that is what most made me into him at like that first thing where it was just, they were so ridiculously cute and funny together, and Chris was just so tickled and just thought it was hilarious. And Taika was like, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut all your hair off. That's how you have a transformation. Like for that first Thor movie, he's like, this was my brilliant idea. Chop his hair off. Anyway, the two of them were so funny. That was my first and probably still my main interest, attraction, like knowing about him was that interview, and then it just all exploded from there.
Well, even the title of it, God of Thunder and Ragnarok, and like just the winking, the like, we're gonna have fun with this.
Oh yeah.
Right out of the gate, it was like, oh, okay. And it was so enjoyable. I mean, Kate Blanchett in it, of course, and that Jeff Goldblum, we've done a huge fans on his entree into the Marvel world, that he's just so fantastic.
Well, he didn't shy away from color and ridiculousness. That was his move. He's like, you know what? Let's just go bananas.
And was that the first time we had Matt Damon as actor Loki appearing?
Yes.
Oh, it's so
yes,
good.
Indeed.
That was genius.
And Luke Hemsworth as...
And Sam Neill.
Yeah. And Anthony Hopkins. And there's just... Man, they stacked the decks is what...
How did he not get Kristen Schaal in there?
Are we sure she's not? I mean, that's a large cast. I mean, if I go down the list, no, she's not listed as a cast member. And she probably is like, what? Just give me one of the weird little creatures where I could do a voice. Come on. But,
Yeah.
So that
Good
obviously puts you in Hollywood royalty, because when your box office is practically almost $1 billion, that is a whole different ball game that you're going to be able to get greenlit on most projects in a very different way than you might have previously.
Which I think is why he was able to get Jojo Rabbit going after that, because you have to have some momentum. He's talked about the idea that, well, I made this book that was not a comedy into a comedy about Hitler, which is a hard sell. And also, then I'm going to basically play Hitler, which I don't look anything like Hitler. So this is all very weird. But I think he had enough momentum from Thor being so successful that he was able to be like, no, trust me, this is going to be very cool and fun. And don't worry about that it's Hitler. He does say that apparently it was the studio's idea that he play Hitler. And I don't know. He's joked.
I mean,
he's joked
You
that
might be
no
the
one.
only one who gets the appropriate tonnage on this script, sir.
Yeah. I think he had joked about no one wanting to play Hitler.
yeah, I was
like,
going to say
yeah.
that's one of those ones like, okay, you can fall on that sword. Like,
Yeah, you
if
think this is gonna work. Let's
you
see.
think this can actually, you can swing this, then you go for it. But just like you, I remember hearing pre-talk about it. And just the name Jojo Rabbit, it takes place in Germany. It's during Nazi occupation, Hitler, just all these elements that you're like, whoa,
What are you doing? Yeah.
Okay.
It seemed crazy. And then was so brilliant.
And then also because of his other background, you thought, well, I don't think this can be serious. And then it wasn't. Yet, it's like described as a war comedy. You're like, okay, usually those two words don't go that well together, but it really, really worked. And I think because he didn't look like Hitler, it almost worked better because it was supposed to be this kid's imagination of Hitler. And Scarlett Johansson is awesome in it as the mother. And once again, the kids, he leaned the entire script and the story, it's through the eyes of a young boy played by Roman Griffin Davis, who was just fantastic, little heartbreaker, because he's a young Nazi and he really believes in his party, his affiliation, and how that gets broken down literally is just so, this is true storytelling. Mm-hmm. It really is beautifully shot. The cinematography and the set design and the costumes, incredible. And Scarlett Johansson did a great job as the mother. Sam Rockwell was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Can I shout out the other kid?
That's what I was going to get to.
Okay, go for it.
Played by Archie Yates. Yorkie, his best friend.
He was so good.
Oh my God. What, John, because you're good at remembering lines. What was that last line they had?
The one about the paper armor that's the one I want to remember, but I can't.
The paper armor or the paper uniform?
Sorry, yes, his uniform, which wasn't armor and was made of paper.
So sad.
I just remember the line. In the end, it's like, I want to go see my mom and get like a hug. Like, whoever it was like, oh my God. He was just so heartbreaking and so sweet. And it also spoke of, to tell a story through the eyes of a child of war and how it affects you. Because I don't want to give some spoiler alerts, but, there are moments that are truly heartbreaking. And the way he does it is, oh my gosh, could just rip your heart out. Yet, did the up and down ride with you. So there'll be moments of a very low and then bring you back up. So yeah, just fantastic once again with children.
Yeah, so that was the one where he won an Oscar for Best Screenplay Adaptation because obviously this book existed and he took the book, which was serious, which I haven't read the book, but in an interview with Terry Gross, he definitely said, well, I'm not good at making serious movies, so I just took this book and did what I do with it, which is serious, but with a heart and comedy overtones.
And which is genius because, sometimes to take someone else's work and to see a different direction with the material, that is in itself can be such a challenge. That he won an Oscar for that is well deserved because the source material was not tonally this.
Right. He didn't do just a straight across. This is the exact representation of the book. He did something different with it, which
and it
very
really, really
amazing.
worked. Yeah. Just fantastic. If you have not seen it, highly recommend it. And I watched it with my, I think at the time he might have been 11 or 10 years old.
Yeah, what was interesting is he talked about that he was extremely interested in the idea of these youth camps and the indoctrination of the kids and pitting the kids against their parents and really making them believe.
Turning people in.
Yeah, and just that whole element of it was really interesting. And he said in his research, he watched a lot of interviews with people who were now, probably in their 90s, who were in those camps and what they thought about it and how their perception of it was, which was very different from watching the propaganda sort of material about the camps.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of those, you can read a sentence or two about that, or you see the little piece of video or a picture and you're like, oh, that's astounding, or you don't fully comprehend it. So to then see it sort of acted out, for a better word, it's like, oh, right, this is the way that it's terrible and challenging, and how in the world did this happen?
Yeah. It was fascinating that was something that he really felt was an interesting part of the story to tell, and what not attracted him to it, but was part of why he wanted to do this material, that aspect of it.
Then he was involved in something I really loved, which was the 2019 The Mandalorian.
Oh, yeah.
On Disney. So he was one of the directors. Jon Favreau basically led the charge on all that, but they used many different directors, and he was a director involved with it. And that first season, and that was sort of Disney's real big dip into, we're going to do an original spin-off of a character, a whole series. The Mandalorian, the character itself, I guess, with Jon Favreau, has always been very fascinated with. That, I thought, was a great series, and he's one of the directors on it.
Yeah, I mean, so for it to not be part of the Skywalker or a character introduced from the main movies is quite interesting. And look, they've really leaned into, they're like, all right, these, are robots. What if we give them some great voices?
Yeah, so he obviously does a voice for one of the, is it IG-11? He talked about it in some interview, and he couldn't remember what it was called. I mean, it was a comedic thing. He was like, oh, you know what it was? It was, those things where they're like, what are the most Googled things about you? And he went through, like, this is why I heard him
Taika
say his
Waititi
name.
Googles himself.
Yeah. I heard him say his name probably 50 times, which was great. And then it's all these questions. And one of them was, who is the character that Taika Waititi plays on The Mandalorian? And he's like, I play a robot. His name is... And then he does like a jumbled attempt at like different letters, and like they correct him from off stage. It is very funny. And then I love, of course, editing wise, that they left that in. And then he does a funny take where, then he says it with authority. I, of course, play IG-11. Because at what point he's like, IG-11? What is it? What do I? Oh, God.
I think they're going to incorporate that whole sequence into the next Mandalorian season and wang that character on the head, and he's going to forget his name.
Oh, God. I mean, it would be kind of genius. Yeah. So it was funny to hear him talk about that.
And I think that, through all of this, you have overlapping of the Avengers going on, right? And I think because of Ragnarok, the Thor character, some of the directions they take him in the Avengers, I got to give him credit for that, because
the influence, yeah.
Well, look, it's interesting. Well, I thought you were going a different direction, but Taika shows up now in the Avengers movie because he's now one of the companions of Thor, which is like, okay, great. Love Korg. He's a rock man. It's totally good.
Oh, yeah, man. The Wi-Fi.
What's the Wi-Fi? Oh, he's beating up on us again. But I was, unfortunately, so I wasn't going in where you were going. What I was thinking was that it's because they replaced the previous companions, some of which are dead, which is sad. But, he had some famous companions already. So...
Sorry.
He needs a team, though.
But one of my favorite character arcs is Fat Thor.
Oh, the
fat, depressed Thor is just an emotional Thor. I mean, an
overeating Thor.
Oh
my
Thor. Gosh! I mean, I just did not see that coming, and so when they found him at Asgard, in the new Asgard in like Norway, that's where they find him, and he's very depressed. I just feel like the seeds of all that was planted by Taika and Chris deciding like, what would happen if you have a depressed superhero? Like, what would an out-of-shape superhero look like?
And then capitalizing on that and taking that going with it.
Yeah, so that's one of my faves.
Yeah, he was definitely reading The Incredibles' dad. Look.
Yeah.
That's not fair. He can just take a lot of mead and still be very strong.
Okay, so I think we should mention Wellington Paranormal, which I don't know if anyone else has watched it. Initially, it was only available in New Zealand. Again, it's that documentary fake style, and it's about two police officers working for a small department that is investigating paranormal activity in New Zealand. Somehow Sarah was aware of it because Sarah is Sarah and was like, oh, I think we can watch it if we do this VPN thing where we lie about where we are. So we watched a little bit of it when it was first available, which was 2018, but now it's just available on HBO Max. So I've been watching that. He is a producer on it, and it is quite funny. And I do love a New Zealand vibe and accent. So already I was in, but it is very funny. And that was before what is now currently, I would say, Our Flag Means Death, his big TV show foray. There's another one, too. It's not quite as straight-ahead comedy. That is Reservation Dogs, which has had one season, and I think their new season is coming out.
I think it is.
Like now
just
or
dropped.
next month?
like practically right as this episode drops.
Right now, this minute. Sorry, I got to go watch it. Okay.
Sorry.
So Wellington Paranormal, very funny. Love Our Flag Means Death. I mean, he is just fantastic as Blackbeard, and love Rhys Darby. The whole cast is amazing, and the setup is very fun. I do like that he said for his research, he looked up Blackbeard, and he jokingly says, I'm too lazy. I read the beginning, and they were like, basically, we know nothing about him. Everything is speculation. Then I can do whatever I want. So I kept my own accent. I did. He's like, whatever. I could. He also kind of joked about Hitler. He's like, I didn't research. I just did whatever I wanted. It's in his imagination, this Hitler. So it can be whatever I want it to be. Oh, God. Very funny when he talks about his process being not loosey-goosey, but he definitely has an idea of like, don't be so serious. Like, why? It should be fun still.
Oh, and interestingly, his kind of tack on that character, not, we don't know what the real background is, that feels exactly like the Dread Pirate Roberts from The Princess Bride, which he hilariously read for home movies.
Oh, right.
Because he's like, I took over for the old Dread Pirate Roberts. It was Joe. Now I'm going to convince this next guy. So it's like he just like lifted that entire idea, and that works perfectly.
Yeah.
So,
he was inspired.
And interestingly, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that it's hard to keep track of everything a director / writer / actor / comedian does.
Yeah.
Can't always get on that track. There's a whole bunch of voiceover stuff that I was like, he did what? What's that? I don't know what that is. An entire mini-series, charity reading. But the one that I wanted to bring up that's one of the most current ones, and I saw a little snippet of like him and Chris Hemsworth, them talking about their careers to their kids. His kids were almost impressed that he did a voice in Lightyear, but also don't care about anything that he does. I mean, they care more now, but they also are like, you did a voice? We watched the movie. Dad.
Yeah.
It was funny. It's one of those things. His voice is distinctive, but if you're not getting enough of it, it's so like watching Lightyear, like, wait a minute, kind of sounds like Taika. And then I was like, oh, that's it.
Was it? It's over. Whoops. Okay.
But his character is very funny, shockingly, and then you kind of lock in on it once you move on, and he becomes a bigger character.
And as a big character, Free Guy.
Oh, yeah. Free Guy was ridiculously funny. I mean, when he showed up...
It's a Ryan Reynolds vehicle, basically. He's the star of it. It's directed by Sean Levy. So Taika is an actor in it, and he plays a very self-absorbed...
Jerky?
Morals are unscrupulous in the very cutthroat world of gaming.
Yeah, he's a real jerk.
And I mean, some of his physical choices, it goes back to what you were talking about, John, where I'm going to think about something and I'm going to sit down on the floor and think about it and then roll out of that and then jump up and then,
try to jump up.
and miss, but still look cool. And Jodie Comer, who I love when it was in it as well, and Joe Carey from Stranger Things. And it was one of those films, for some reason, the trailer did not appeal to me, Free Guy. And then, because you're trying to find family entertainment that hits a teenager boy's vibe, we were like, all right, totally entertaining, very enjoyable. Free Guy.
It was weird. They had two trailers. The second trailer was super fun because it was just focused on, whatever, that villain Ryan Reynolds or villain blue t-shirt guy. You're like, wait a minute. Either this is fake or this is the exact 30 seconds from the movie, but it was
Right,
still very
right, right.
enjoyable. But for me, that was the clue, because the first one was kind of like straight ahead. You're like, okay, funny. We've had a couple concepts like this where it's like VR but real but not real but whatever. Okay, yeah, Ryan Reynolds is funny. Sean Levy's very funny. Jodie Comer, Joe Carey, great. All this is great. But you're like, well, okay, I don't know. We'll see. And then for me, that second trailer was a clue like, oh, you know what? I think they're going to take some risks. This is going to be maybe worth it.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. And Taika in it was
A gem.
a gem. Yeah. He definitely took over most scenes he was in. He can steal a scene for sure.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what's on the agenda next. So apparently, gonna direct a Star Wars movie. That is the next big announced thing, which he very humorously talked about talking to Natalie Portman on the set of Thor. And she said, oh, what do you think you're going to do next? And he's like, well, we're trying to set up this Star Wars movie. Have you ever thought about doing a Star Wars movie?
He did not.
He did, apparently. I mean, he's telling this story.
Hi, Princess Leia's mom.
New Zealand is an island, okay?
And
They're
then
isolated.
She basically, in his interpretation, very deadpan says, I've done Star Wars movies. I've done 3 Star Wars movies or whatever she says. And he was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about those.
Well, and you're referring to that they just did in the theaters now, Thor, Love and Thunder.
Correct. So they're on the set of Love and Thunder is when this conversation apparently
Which
happened.
I think it's gotten, I don't know why, some mixed reviews. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I loved it.
I just thought it
Yeah.
was a fun, romp of escapism into that Marvel world. And Natalie comes back and has a nice sort of arc. And we start with out of shape
Dad bod Thor.
Dad bod Thor, which
Dad bod to God bod.
And they do some really funny stuff with the sense of humor about his hammers and how the rivalry there and the kid, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's going to watch it eventually, but there are a lot of kids in this as well. And his kids.
And Chris Hemsworth's kids, and Natalie Portman's kids, and Christian Bale's kids. Apparently, all of the kids were in it. Yeah. Mhm.
Although I think Taika's is
she's the featured, yeah.
because she's the most important little girl.
But yes, very fun. Once again, Matt Damon, Luke Hemsworth does appearances, and it's just so fabulous. So that's in movie theaters now.
And the other significant thing, his Korg character is voicing over the whole thing. Let me tell you the story of Thor, the god of thunder.
And Jane Foster.
Yeah, and all the names
Jane
are wrong.
Fonda.
Yeah, wrong. Whoops, Jodie Foster. What? No. All
Yeah,
of
if you
that's
really want, you could do in the movie theaters Thor, Love and Thunder, and then at home, on your TV screen, you could watch What We Do in the Shadows and Our Flag Means Death. And actually, you know what? Lightyear, he does a voiceover in it as well. So, man, you can get every vertical with him right now.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
So Star Wars, that's super exciting.
So Star Wars, he doesn't know exactly what it's going to be. I mean, at this point, he's talking about that he's writing it, and he doesn't know what it's going to be until it's written. And currently, it's not written, so he doesn't know. I mean, he'd kind of joke that it was going to be about Chewbacca's parents meeting in New York, and somebody really jumped on that, and he was like, "I wish I never said that," but whatever.
I'm like, that sounds great.
And then he talked himself into it. It was an interview that he did for Rolling Stone where he goes off on this whole tangent. And then she's a lawyer. And so they meet in New York, of course, because she's a lawyer. And then it's like, what? And then at the end, he's like, that kind of sounds good. I might have wanted to do that. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't do that. So it's funny, him talking about his writing process, too. Just like, I don't even know what I'm going to write. Sometimes writing is looking at a blank page for 8 hours, but technically, that's writing, too. So.
But this intrigues me because I feel like Star Wars has structure, lore, you have Bibles, you have history. Rules. There's a whole universe, that you kind of follow. And you can obviously veer out because Jon Favreau came in and said, I've always been obsessed with The Mandalorian. I want to do a series on just this character. And he
that
did. And it
worked
was
out
very
incredibly
cool.
well, yeah.
Then we just had one on Boba Fett on Disney as well. So these characters already kind of existed, although peripherally they existed. And now you went off on side stories and really delved deep into them.
But the tone was very much in line with previous Star Wars properties. We'll see what Taika does.
It gets a little more tongue-in-cheek. I mean, The Mandalorian first season nailed it. I mean, they really did an excellent job. So it usually has to tie into what is that universe? You know, you obviously have the Force. And so, you know, where are you going to take this story? Is there some origin? Is there some character you're going to do a spinoff? It would be very unique if he's able to just blank page it and create something from scratch.
Well,
that has no interlocking. Because one of my favorite, and John and I will, so we both agree, Rogue One, which was like, all of a sudden you realize, like, oh my God, sorry to blow it for all of you, but like, none of these people are going to be in any future movies because of what's happening with the story. But so well done. But yet it ties to the bigger story. There are characters that interweave through it that you know are going to go on. So I would be so excited to see what he does because of those parameters within that world. How is he able to play with it? And it goes back to the Jojo Rabbit, where you're like, he can get really creative.
Well, it'll be interesting also because Marvel was game to let him really go way off book and off tone and do a different vibe, even than the previous two Thor movies. I mean, he really just was like, how about we do this complete crazy thing and take Thor in a totally different direction tonally?
I think Taika's going to go in a interesting direction. It's going to be kind of like a Western. That we haven't really seen, where it's going to be possibly even set in a location that we're familiar with and comfortable with, and that's going to be like the home base for whatever the series is. I wouldn't be surprised if it's at the cantina, and he's bartending the entire time, and he's cast himself in the series as the bartender, you know?
Yeah, the cantina, you know, they've actually dropped that into both Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and there was something happened recently.
And, you know, why wouldn't he be like a traveling bartender that's going to all these other...
know.
Oh, there's there's a cantina on this planet. Yeah, I got to go set that up. It's a franchise.
Well, he has said in interviews he doesn't know what he's doing, but he won't go forward unless it's the right fit. So, I mean, you know, it sometimes...
They're very protective of Disney. I don't doubt that, you know, there has been very public stories of directors coming on and thinking they're going to be great fits. And
the Solo movie, the Han Solo vehicle.
And things having to shift and change. So... there you go. And I do want to go back that there was a couple little tidbits about his earlier career, which is, John, the 5-member comedy ensemble was called So You're a Man.
Oh, okay.
That's true. I was like, I meant to say that, but then we moved on.
And then he...
that is like a straight... That, for me, ties directly into Flight of the Conchords. You're a man. I'm a man. Sometimes
well, then the comedy duo called the Humor Beasts with Jermaine Clement, that was the two of them, and they won New Zealand's highest accolade in comedy, which is called the Billy T Award.
Oh.
And that was in 1999. So, you know, you really think about a 20-year career of being creative, being an artist, and what he's achieved. It's so impressive. And it speaks to him being his authentic self and, you know, not staying in one lane, because you always hear that, stay in your lane. But it's like, actually, because he started off as an actor. Now I'm going to try directing and writing, and does that short, and it's nominated for an Academy Award. I mean, there are times like, don't stay in your lane. Don't let people just put you one pigeonhole, because look, he's able to do all this because he doesn't subscribe to that.
Yeah. Well, definitely he thinks of himself as an artist first. He was a painter and was interested in animation, and I think we see a little bit of that in Boy and other projects. And, you know, he's got a lot of different ways that he's approaching being a creative person. The last thing I want to bring up is Time Bandits is the other thing that's been announced. The current status on it is that it's in casting. So they've cast the main boy. It's a TV series. I can't wait. I mean, that is an iconic original movie, that Terry Gilliam movie. Wow.
Now, we should do a little backstory on that, because we also have another podcast called What We're Watching. So we watch and absorb a lot of television. But as children, we were not allowed to.
Yeah.
So quite often we'd be sneaking and watching things. Time Bandits, the original Terry Gilliam, for some reason it was on like KCOP, or almost like your local television station. Or it was on like Channel Z, which was one of the first movie stations.
Which you could kind of get if you jostled your cable box just right.
Which we would do, because if our mom was out running errands, our dad was out of the house, like that TV immediately went on. You know, that's the thing about parenthood. You deny your kids something, whether it be sugar,
That's
TV,
what they want.
that's what they want. So soon as our parents left, it was like we were going up on the roof trying to steal someone's cable. Like, it was insane.
I don't think we went that far, but we probably could have.
Time Bandits was so unique and original. It was in 1981. I mean, we're talking about we were kids. Sean Connery, John Cleese, Ian Holmes, very British and scary. Time traveling with, you know, weird creatures and elements, yet it had humor in it. Very much a Taika Waititi tone. Humor, but scary. A child lead actor.
Yeah.
I mean, like, all these things. So when I heard that basically being announced as well, I was like, oh,
That's a good
man,
fit, yeah.
that could be an amazing fit. Whether he actually steps in as a director, listen, I'm going to put it out there, Taika. I don't think it needs to be massively rewritten, but you can adapt it. However, you know, do a little adaptation on it. You can definitely direct it. You can definitely act in it, and you can definitely produce it. Huge Fan Podcast is requesting that you do a quadruple services on this film.
On this series.
It's series.
Yeah, it's a series.
Oh, whoa. Okay. I didn't read that part of the announcement. That's amazing. So an adapted TV series. Whoa, that is going to be for Apple. Okay, great.
Yeah, I can't wait. That's very exciting.
And Peter Dinklage has been linked to it as well.
Ah,
Yes, this is exciting. All right. Get to it.
I mean, you know, there's many more rumored attachments options.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are great. Flash Gordon, I don't know if I'm ready for that. 2 animated Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory / Oompa Loompa projects. Seems wild.
Well, listen, a spin-off of or a deep dive into the world of Oompa Loompa would be amazing because you get a little taste of it from Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Right.
But, you know, to me, I'm like, I don't know that we need a whole other Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but to see really what the Oompa Loompas, their backstory was, Taika Waititi probably do a good job with that. So...
And we also have, he's going to do an Akira, supposedly.
Oh my gosh.
And they have the Werewolves as a sequel to What We Do in the Shadows.
which I remember hearing that and thinking, yes, please. 'Cause-
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And supposedly the next thing I think that might come out is his next movie, Next Goal Wins.
Ah, yes. Mm-hmm. That is completed.
What is that about?
Football or American soccer.
Okay, great. Well, listen, he's keeping busy. That's why we are huge fans of Taika Waititi. You can go back 20 years and find amazing projects he's been involved with. Most of them are available, as Catherine has spoken about quite a few of them, like Boy. So you can find most of them and really do a deep dive. And even that short that put him on the map.
That's just on
Two
YouTube,
Cars,
yeah.
One Night.
I would say that Eagle versus Shark, totally worth checking out. I mean, it's one of his original, you know, it's got his whole vibe on it. I think the only way you can see it, though, is rental through, I think I rented it recently through Amazon.
Unless,
so.
of course,
Oh,
you already
okay.
own the DVD like I do.
Oh, you do?
Then you can just watch it.
And then I could have borrowed it from you.
Yep.
Or just wait
Do you
another
still have a
month.
DVD player?
DVDs play in Blu-ray players, and I still have one of those, and you
Okay.
would too if you have a gaming system, probably.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which you do.
right.
Yeah.
Well, my son does. Yes, you're right. All right. And Reservation Dogs is on right now as well. I think the second season
it's
is just
so
starting.
good,
So there's
yeah.
so much. Taika Waititi.
Yeah, and we're very happy that Our Flag Means Death got a second season because there was a lot of weird like delays in them getting picked up for their second season. So it was very good news that they are going to be able to continue that story, however that works out. Okay, so thank you for listening to Huge Fans, and you can follow us on all of our social media at Huge Fans Podcast. And we really appreciate you leaving comments and letting us know what you are huge fans of. So thank you for listening to Huge
Huge
Fans.